So what would we do? Divide both sides by -2. What do you have to do with the inequality when you divide by negative? You got to flip it. So this would become x is less than or equal to 3. Go ahead and solve the second one. Bring all your x's to the left, all the numbers to the right. Subtract 3x. So that would be 2x minus 1 is greater than 7. Now what? What would be the next step? Plus 1. So that would give you 2x is greater than 8. What's the last step? So x is greater. Do I have to flip it? Would it be greater than or less? Can you close the door for me, Emma? Would it be greater than or less than 4? Greater than 4. That's your second answer. All right, last one. Let's go ahead and answer. So you have x plus 5 is less than or equal to 8. How would you solve that for x? Subtract the 5. So that would be x is less than or equal to 3. Any questions about how we did that? So today we're going to learn something new, something that you have not covered before. Please put away your phones, take out your earbuds, open up your reveal book to page 83. So let's go to page 83, and we're going to learn about absolute value equations, how to solve it algebraically. Okay, absolute value equations. Let's first talk about what it means to take the absolute value. Absolute value is the distance from 0 on the number line. Okay? When we talk about absolute value, let's just talk about a basic absolute value. If I ask you, what numbers have an absolute value of 5? What numbers have an absolute value of 5? 5 and what else? -5. So notice how this would have two answers. There's two answers to this because x equals 5 has an absolute value of 5, and also x equals -5 has an absolute value of 5. So that's why when you solve an absolute value equation, you can have two answers. It is possible that an absolute value equation will have two answers. Now, when you solve an absolute value equation, the very first step is going to be to isolate the absolute value. After you isolate it, you're going to separate it. Separate into two equations. Then we're going to use our properties to solve it. And our last step is going to be to check it. Now, when you see it in words, it looks really complicated, but it's really not that complicated. So let's just dive in. We're going to do examples 1, 2, and 3, and then start homework 9. So let's look at example 1, sorry. Example 1 on page 83. So this is my absolute value. I'm going to go ahead and put a box. Make a box around the absolute value. Because it's really important, going back to step 1, the first step is to get that box by itself. You cannot separate it until you isolate it. So that means that I need to get rid of this -9, and I need to get rid of the 2. Which one will I get rid of first, -9 or 2? -9. How do you get rid of that -9? Subtract it. If it's already negative, we won't subtract it. So what we're going to do? Add it. So let's add 9. So when you add 9, you're adding it to its like term, which is 17. So that'll give you 2 times the absolute value of 5x plus 1 equals 4x, and what's 17 plus 9? 26. All right, any questions about our first step? But we're not done, because again, I need to get this by itself. So there's a 2 in front. How do I get rid of that 2? Do I subtract 2? You have to divide it. And why are we dividing out the 2? Because it's what? Because it's being multiplied. So let's divide it by 2. Now, when you divide by 2, we're dividing this by 2. You're dividing 4x by 2. And the 26 by 2. So you'll have the absolute value of 5x plus 1 equals, what do you get when you take the 4x and divide it by 2? What's 4x divided by 2? 2x. And what's 26 divided by 2? 13. Okay. So now that this is isolated, see, the first step is to isolate, to get the absolute value by itself. Now that it's isolated, we're ready to separate it into 2 equations. That's why it says case 1 and case 2. So let's do case 1 first. For case 1, you're not going to change anything. You're just going to get rid of the absolute value and solve it. So this 2x plus 3, you're going to solve this equation. So go ahead, write 2x plus 13, not 3, sorry. 2x plus 13, go ahead and solve that equation for x. So 5x plus 1 equals 2x plus 13. Solve it for x. So we subtract 2x, which is 3x plus 1 equals 13. What's the next step? Subtract the 1, which is 3x equals 12. What's the last step? Divide by 3, and you get x equals 4. So who got x equals 4? Okay. So the next step, let's go back. You see how it says the last step. So we isolated, now we're separating it, we solved it, now we need to check it. So, but the check is not that complicated. When you check it, this is what I want you to do. I want you to take the answer that you got and substitute it into this piece, only this piece. So put that 4 in for x. So pick up your calculator, take 2 times 4 plus 13. This is your check. Now, what you're checking is, you're checking to make sure that this is positive. What I have highlighted in yellow has to be positive. I don't care what the number is, it just has to be a positive number. So is 2 times 4 plus 13 a positive number? Yes or no? Yes. Yes. So that means that this, x equals 4, that is a solution. That is an actual solution. So now let's talk about case 2. When you do case 2, so for case 1, we just leave this 2x plus 13. But for case 2, we have to take this and multiply it by -1. Because remember, there's 2 numbers, a positive and a negative, that have the same absolute value. So take -1 and multiply that by 2x plus 13. So for case 1, we just leave it the same. But for case 2, we have to multiply it by -1. So that gives you 5x plus 1. Now distribute the -2. What's negative? I mean, not the -2. Distribute the -1. What's -1 times 2? -2x. And -1 times 13. Go ahead and solve that. Solve it for x. So we're adding the 2x. And then we have to subtract the 1. And divide by 7. So we get x equals -2. But let's make sure that that's going to work. Again, you need to do a check. Put this -2 right over here where I have highlighted in yellow. And make sure that this is positive. So it's 2 times -2 plus 13. I don't care what the number is. Is it a positive or a negative number? What's 2 times -2 plus 13? What'd you get? You got a negative? Who got a negative number? 2 times -2 plus 13. Should be positive. Because 2 times -2 is -4. And -4 plus 13 is +9. So that means that this is a solution also. So there are 2 answers. 2 answers. So it doesn't matter that this is negative, because you can get a negative answer and it still check out. What I'm checking is what I have highlighted in yellow. Is that positive? Mm-hmm. All right, any questions about how we did that first example? Let's look at example 2. First step, we got to isolate. So again, when I isolate this right here, I need to get this box by itself. So what do I do first? First step is to get rid of this x. How do you get rid of the x? If it's a minus x, what's the opposite of subtracting x? Adding x. Let's add x. Now, how do you get rid of the 2? Divide it. So you have the absolute value of x plus 1 equals what? What do you get when you take 4x divided by 2? 4x divided by 2 is what? 2x. And then 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay, so you see how this is isolated. Going back to our steps. It's already isolated, so now we're ready to separate. Anthony, can you sit up, please? So we're ready to separate it. And for our first case, when we separate it, the only thing we're going to do, we're not going to change anything. The only thing we're changing is we get rid of the absolute value. So my first case is going to be x plus 1 equals 2x minus 2. Go ahead and solve that. So x plus 1 equals 2x minus 2. Solve that for x. So I'm going to subtract x. 1 equals x minus 2. And now what else do we have to do? What's the next step? Add 2. So we get x equals 3. So again, we need to check it. So this is what has, when you see this part that I have highlighted in yellow, that has to be positive. So you're checking to make sure that 2 times 3 minus 2 is positive. So is 2 times 3 minus 2 positive or negative? I don't care what it is. I just know it needs to be positive. So what is 2 times 3 minus 2? I heard negative 12. 2 times 3 minus 2. It's not negative 12. So you put a negative. So the minus sign is 2 times 3 minus 2. You put 2 times 3 negative 2. Okay. 2 times 3 minus 2 would be 4, which is positive, right? So that means that this number is okay. This is good. This is legit. We can keep it. Now let's go ahead and find our second answer. For the second answer, you see this part that I have highlighted in yellow? We have to multiply it by -1. That's why it has a little minus sign right there. So we're going to put a -1. Let's go ahead and put the 1 there. And then we're going to put our 2x minus 2. Go ahead and distribute. So that would be x plus 1. -1 times 2 is -2x. And -1 times -2 is +2. Solve that for x. So to solve it for x, we're going to add 2x to both sides. So that would be 3x plus 1 equals 2. And then we are going to subtract the 1. So that would be 3x equals 1. And when you divide both sides by 3, we get a fraction. You get x equals 1/3. So let's check that though. I want you to take this 1/3 and substitute it in. And if you're not comfortable with the fraction, now the yellow calculators, you can put a fraction in. So we're actually going to leave it a fraction. So take 2 times 1/3 minus 2. And figure out if it's positive or negative. So take 2 times 1/3, and the fraction button says N over D. If you need help, you can bring your calculators up. I'll show you how to do it. But take 2 times 1/3 minus 2. And tell me if it's a positive or a negative number. Does anybody need help? All right, you should get a negative this time. So that means that this solution right here, we have to throw it out. We can't use that. That one did not check out okay. You can see at the bottom where it says it's false. So we only have one solution. So absolute value equations can have 2 solutions. It can have 1 solution. Now let's look at example 3, and then we'll start homework 9. Look at example 3. So we had to throw out the 1/3, but we can keep the 3. All right, let's look at example 3. So the first step again is to isolate it. So here is my absolute value. When you subtract the 10 from both sides, you're left with the absolute value of 4x minus 7 equals -8. And right there, you can stop. I know that that is no solution. And let's talk about why this has no solution. What this is saying is, what number can I put in here to get an absolute value that is negative? It's impossible to get an absolute value that equals -8. So when you get down to this step, if you have an absolute value equal to a negative number, then you stop right there. You don't have to do anything else. That's automatically a no solution. This sentence is never true. And the solution, well, we're just going to say that there is no solution. All right, take out a sheet of paper. Let's start homework 9. I'm going to focus on the evens because you have the answers to the odds in the back of the book. Anthony, do you need to stand up so you can stay awake? If you need to, then go right on ahead. You can go lean against the window. Go ahead and copy down homework 9. Now, homework 9 is due on Tuesday, not tomorrow. And I will update Canvas. I'm not sure if I updated it yet. But because I missed that day, we're kind of a day behind. So take a minute, Label your homework. We're going to work through numbers 2 and 4 together. We're going to do these first 4 together. I'm going to do 2 and 4, and you're going to do 1 and 3. So take a minute, copy it down, and let's work through it. All right, everybody have the homework copy down? Still copying it down? All right. Okay, so number 2 says the absolute value of 4W minus 1 equals 5W plus 37. So step number 1 is to get the absolute value by itself. Is there anything on the left other than this absolute value? So when I say left, I'm talking about the left sign of the equal sign. Is there a number in front of this absolute value that I need to divide out, or is there something behind it I need to add or subtract? All right, so we're ready to get started. First case, case 1. Case 1, all you do is drop your absolute value. Go ahead and solve this for W. Solve that equation for W. The homework questions. Homework is on page 89. Did you take a picture of it or write down the homework, Elijah? You need me to put it back up? Oh, okay. Homework starts on page 89. So I subtracted the 4W. You could also subtract 5W though. You get the same answer. And then I'm going to subtract 37. So who got negative 38 for their answer? Negative 38 equals W. Is that what you all got? All right, we got to check it. And when you check it, you're just making sure that this part right here is positive, the part that I have highlighted in yellow. So take 5 times negative 38 plus 37. 5 times negative 38 plus 37. Is that a positive answer or a negative answer? Who got negative? Who got that is negative? So what does that mean? That means that this is not a solution. It's extraneous. So I'm actually going to throw this out. We're not going to use that. So now let's do our second case. For the second case, we have 4W minus 1. That's going to equal negative 1 times 5W plus 37. Distribute and solve. Go ahead and see what you get. Solve that for W. So we add the 5W. So that would be 9W minus 1 equals negative 37. Then we add 1 to both sides. So that would be 9W equals negative 36. And then divide both sides by 9. So what's negative 36 divided by 9? All right, let's check it. Take this negative 4, put it in this yellow. 5 times negative 4 plus 37. You need it to be positive. If it's positive, we can keep it. If it's negative, we have to throw it out. It's that simple. That's your check. So did you get a positive or a negative number? 5 times negative 4 plus 37. Positive. So we can keep that one. That's a good one. So this is my only solution. That is a good one. All right. Leave yourself some space for number 3. Let's start number 4. Number 4 says negative 2 times the absolute value of 7 minus 3y minus 6 equals 14. All right, now this one we're not ready because we have to get this by itself. So we got to get rid of some stuff. Before I start writing my equations, we got to get rid of some stuff. So what would I do first? Is negative 14. Thank you. All right, did I write it correct now? Okay. So what should I do first? Because there's 2 things that we have to get rid of. This negative 6 and the negative 2. So which one goes first? Negative 6. How do you get rid of the negative 6? It's being subtracted. So what's the opposite of subtracting 6? Adding 6. Let's add 6 to both sides. So you have negative 14 plus 6, which is negative 8. Now to get rid of this negative 2, do we add 2? We divide it because that's being multiplied. So this is really important. This is what I need to make sure you guys understand for your second test. I'm dividing 2 negatives, which makes it positive. But let's just pretend for a moment that this was negative 4. I would be done. I would walk away from the question. Because if the absolute value equals a negative number, it is no solution. You don't need to do anything else. You walk away from the question, there is no solution. This is not negative, so we can keep going. Let's separate it. Your first equation is going to be, I'm going to write it off to the side. So your first equation is 7 minus 3y equals 4. Go ahead and solve that. Your second equation is 7 minus 3y equals negative 4. So solve both of those equations to get your 2 possible answers. How would you solve that? What would be your 2 steps? Can I subtract these and say 7 minus 3y is negative 4y? Is that okay? What should I do? Subtract 7 and divide by negative 3. You sick? So your first solution should be y equals 1. And that's going to be okay. Now solve the second one to get your second solution. The second answer is a fraction. So I'm going to end there. I want you all to work on questions 1 and 3 next. When you get an answer to number 1, bring it up. I'll check it for you. And that's it.